welcome into the newest edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We've had the little thing called the MLB Trade Deadline in effect, typically record on Mondays, and it's released by Tuesday. But with the trade deadline, there's no point to talk about all these hypotheticals just for less than 24 hours later to be like, well, that's not right, or this didn't happen, and so forth. So now that the trade deadline has passed, as we're recording about 7 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, August 2nd, I am joined by Matt Selz at the Selzman on Twitter and James Grande, the underscore king on Twitter at the _real_Grande. So, Matt, we'll start with you like I always do. How is everything going for you in your neck of the woods?
Well, it'd be better if my air conditioning didn't go out earlier today. It's like 107 here in Lincoln right now, and it's currently 78 and climbing in my house. So luckily, we called in the air conditioning folks. They'll be here tomorrow at some point, but not an ideal time for air conditioning to go out, especially when I'm like sweating bullets over here with who's getting traded and what moves are happening. So that's not great. I knew most of the deals for the Nats that were going to happen today. I basically had accepted those, so that wasn't necessarily a shock. But there were plenty of other shocks that happened along the way.
Yeah, we will definitely talk about some of those. But James, MLB trade deadline today is coming past. Matt's got the AC issues. Hopefully everything is good for you. But how are you doing, my man?
Well, Matt has the AC issues. I also had a power outage in my neighborhood for the last 2 hours, 2.5, due to some trees falling on the power line. So, what a great deadline it was for all of us here at Fantasy Alarm, and I'm so happy to be back in action. After I put a little ice on my arm, and I'm warming up in the bullpen, ready to go for the doubleheader. So, other than that, I'm great. Also a little sweaty because, still taking a little bit for the air to kick on, but no complaints otherwise, Colby. I hope you've had a great trade deadline yourself.
I am tired to say the least. Been writing all of these up. So obviously we're going to talk about a bunch of the deals that happened leading up to the deadline. It's going to be nearly impossible for the three of us to opine on all of these deals here in this podcast. So make sure you head over to fantasyalarm.com. Check out the MLB Trade Deadline Tracker. Most, if not all, or mostly all of the deals there, at least the fantasy relevant ones for the most part, are included in there. So check it out with analysis, talking about some prospects, even linked over to Matt Sells' prospect report for some of the more higher profile prospects that were included in some of these deals.
Yeah, that will be Wednesday's prospect report. So probably later in the day when you're listening to this, my updated prospect report will come out. I will have all of the moves and updated rankings and adjustments there. We'll talk about updated team ranks and all that good stuff. So I will have that out on Wednesday for all you good folks.
Yep. So basically your plan of attack here is once you see the notification about the podcast episode being available, check out the trade deadline tracker in one tab, open the prospect report in the other tab of your internet, and make sure you check everything out. But Matt, I'm going to start with you here because I was looking at your prospect report and seeing these possible trade packages for Juan Soto. And obviously being a Nats fan, you had a fairly good idea of maybe what you expected with a little bit of a blend of what you wanted to get in return there for one guy named Juan Soto, and also Josh Bell ended up going too, but I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit. But you seem to have hit the nail on the head for the Soto package, but also, like I said, Josh Bell was included. So, Matt, the stage is yours. Talk about your team sending Juan Soto over to San Diego.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people weren't 100% sure that the deal was actually going to happen. I saw a lot of people this morning on Twitter saying, "Oh, it's just smoke and fire, and they're just trying to generate clicks for things," which I don't even begin to understand that argument. But it was pretty clear pretty early on that Soto just does not want to be in DC anymore, right? You say no to two of the largest contract offers in MLB history. It's pretty clear you don't want to be there. AAV aside, I don't care. It's a lump sum check of a lot of money. So the thing that kind of surprised me was Josh Bell being included. I know the Nats did this with Scherzer and Trey Turner last year to up the prospect haul. And it turns out that they wanted Jarlin Susana really badly from the Padres. And so that's what got Josh Bell included. Now, Bell is a rental through the end of this year, so that's not so bad. But yeah, I mean, if you're San Diego, you're incredibly happy right now, right? You've got Juan Soto for at minimum 2.5 years. They were talking that they might try to extend him in this offseason. We'll see how that goes. And now you get Tatis back like next week. So now you've got Tatis, Machado, and Soto in the middle of that lineup, which is pretty impressive. I don't think we have to go much into the fantasy value of Juan Soto. This doesn't change anything. In fact, it probably helps him because he's got a better lineup around him and basically the same, park factors. In terms of prospects, I am very happy with what the Nats got. I might be the only one in Nats world that likes it, but Mackenzie Gore, phenomenal. If he was still a prospect, he'd be in the top 10 overall. He no longer counts as a prospect. Robert Hassel is fantastic. In fact, if you look at his stat line in the minors right now, his career stat line is pretty reminiscent of a Trey Turner type stat line. So that's pretty nice. Who, by the way, got Trey Turner the last time the Nats made a trade with the Padres. So there is that. James Wood, rather, might be by some. I was looking up some scouts for the Padres, and some of their scouts consider James Wood to be their best prospect overall, which is impressive. So, and we can't look past C.J. Abrams either. He'll start in AAA for the Nats for a week or two, and then he'll be up. So that's kind of my take. And then, I mean, I can't blame Eric Hosmer for not wanting to go to DC, right? Like, that's guy got to orchestrate his no trade clause. We get Luke Voigt instead. So yeah, I mean that pretty well encapsulates it. There's no way to tell winners or losers right now, right? You need to wait like 5 years to see who won or lost this deal.
James, any other thoughts on the Soto deal?
I mean, other than the second best player being dealt to San Diego today, no, not much. I mean, in terms of like fantasy value, I Bell's gonna play every day with both Padres first basemen gone. I do like Luke Voigt getting to play every day as well. I mean, he only hits right-handed pitching anyway, but I do like him getting to play every day. So maybe a flyer on Luke Voigt if he's available. 13 home runs this year, all 13 against righties. I think it's like such a good look. Like the original, when we saw the trades, Matt, I think you and I were on a call, and Mackenzie Gore wasn't in the deal and then was added afterwards. And like just an incredible little wrinkle, the after wrinkle just to get Mackenzie Gore in that deal is tremendous. So the Nats did a great job. Obviously, the Padres lineup is super scary. Very interesting how they, deploy it. I mentioned, I think, I want to see them lead Jurickson Profar off so we don't see Jake Cronenworth like hit fourth. Maybe, move him down the lineup, maybe fifth. But I think that could only improve some of the people around the Padres lineup. Like if Profar does lead off, obviously huge bump to him with who's behind him. He's going to get so many pitches to hit. And the guys behind him, like, they kept Will Myers, right? They didn't end up moving Myers yet. So
no, he was playing. I was just watching the Rockies Padres game before we started recording, and he actually scored a run for them to make it, I think 7-5 or 8-5 Padres or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think all these guys on the Padres benefit from all this because 2, 3, 4 are going to get all the pitches or no pitches to hit, and everyone else is going to say, get the pitches to beat the opposing team. So big boost for Padres value outside of the obvious, 3 names that we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I wrote about in the tracker with C.J. Abrams is a guy. It's one of those things where he comes up to the major, struggles a little bit, goes to AAA and crushes it. Matt, is there any interest in him maybe in deeper leagues? I talked about maybe with his speed, maybe getting some stolen bases down the stretch in Washington. I understand that, temper expectations a little bit. And I also mentioned that I think it'd be wise for the Nats to slow play Gore's return here because I hate to break it to you, not really playing for anything left here in the 2020.
I mean, they never were, so like.
True. But is there? Yeah. I mean, let me put it to you this way: any interest in C.J. Abrams in Washington down the stretch? And if you had to pick of the prospect haul that they got, which are you most excited about?
Okay, so let's go with Abrams first. He could be interesting for stolen bases. Like I said, he's probably going to spend like 2 weeks down at AAA, just getting acclimated and whatnot, and then might come up. There's some question as to whether he'll play second or short because there is Luis Garcia. Yes, one of the 4 Luis Garcias in the major leagues plays for the Nats. He plays shortstop currently, but he could move to second. I presume, by the way, if you have Brady House as a prospect, get ready to see him at third base because I presume he's going to move to third base ultimately. So yeah, if you're in a deep league and you need stolen bases, maybe take a shot on C.J. Abrams. And in terms of who I'm most excited about, I don't know. I mean, technically, Abrams and Gore don't count as prospects anymore, right? They've been bumped out of the prospect rankings because they both went over those limits. So in terms of the ones that are left, I don't know. I mean, I really like Robert Hassel, but James Wood might be my favorite one. He's got power for days. He might have the most power, aside from maybe Jordan Walker, of anybody in the minors. He's got a pretty good hit tool. Also, interesting note, he was high school teammates with Elijah Green, who the Nats took at 5th overall in the first round of the draft like a week ago. So I would say James Wood. He's going to be a longer burn type guy. I don't think he's going to be up quite as quickly as Hassel, but I think overall he might actually have a higher fantasy ceiling.
Now, James, the Yankees were involved at the trade deadline, to say the least. They said, screw them prospects. We don't need them. We're selling out now, which, hey, I get it. Prospects may or may not pan out, but banners fly forever and rings stay shiny for quite a long time. So something to keep in mind there. But with the Yankees, they went to Oakland, got Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino to help with their pitching side of things. They made a couple of other moves, and then it's almost, you never get, like in fantasy leagues, you get to the trade deadline, you know it's coming, and you're like, screw it, I just got to make a move. That's almost what it felt like leading up to the deadline. So James, I'm going to go ahead and let you go here. Talk about the Yankees and their moves. Personally, I think my favorite move that they did might not even have been the Frankie Montas deal, but let's hear your thoughts about the Yankees' entire trade deadline.
I mean, it was flawless until it wasn't. And I'm confused a little bit because the Yankees went into the deadline needing pitching, and they addressed that at the bullpen. I love the bullpen moves they got. Efras has been amazing out of the pen. Lou Trevino was great last year, and if you look at some of his numbers this year, he's literally like the second most unlucky pitcher across Major League Baseball. That can. I mean, there's only positive regression on the horizon for Trevino. And again, I think we talked about last week, Colby. Like that's what they needed. They needed pitching, but they also needed starters, and they obviously addressed that with Frankie Montas, with concerns about innings with Tyone and Nestor Cortez, because they both really haven't thrown a lot in the last few years, and in Nestor's case, ever. There's obviously concerns with Domingo Germán. Not the prettiest past with off the field issues and staying healthy. And that's very concerning considering they dealt Jordan Montgomery. And that was the really nail in the coffin. Like you acquire a guy who puts the ball in play and Andrew Benintendi to start. You trade Joey Gallo. You don't give up your top 4 prospects in your farm to do all of this. They make 4 moves. Don't lose their top 4 prospects, 2 of which elite shortstop prospects, and Jason Dominguez, 19 years old, a lot of pop. And then you trade one of your most reliable arms over the last couple of years, the only lefty you have in your rotation, and you trade him for an outfielder who is currently on the IL after just addressing the issue in the outfield. And it's not that I don't like Harrison Bader. I like Harrison Bader's speed. I think he has some decent pop too. But it just didn't make sense for the Yankees when the concern was pitching to begin with. The offense, I don't know if anyone's noticed. I don't know if Brian Cashman has been sleeping in like a dark, confined space without power or TV or any if his eyes don't work. Or the Yankees score runs. They score a lot of runs, and mainly thanks to like the guy who might rival 60, 65 home runs this year. So it was a great deadline until it wasn't. And it's really disappointing knowing that the Montgomery trade didn't have anything behind it. Because at first you're like, oh, maybe Pablo Lopez. Well, then Pablo Lopez doesn't go anywhere. So it hurt because I'm not sure where the Yankees turn to. They have a couple guys in the farm that, are going to make it to the majors this year, but I'm not in love with the deal that really, really hurt my love for this deadline. It really did.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Bader's a guy who can, when healthy, run a little bit, play some good defense, nice little, fill a little void for that Yankees lineup. And I wrote it in the trade deadline tracker. I understand Jordan Montgomery might be far from spectacular, doesn't light up the radar gun. He just gets outs. And, I kind of also equated it to, like, you go to a restaurant that you've been to numerous times, you want to try something new, but there's something just perfect about Old Reliable. Why mess up something that's good? There's safety and security and reliability, and Montgomery has been there. And you don't see it often. It's, it's not like the Nationals were like, oh, we need to get outfielders. So then they just go and trade Juan Soto. It just doesn't,
right.
It doesn't work like that. That move was very interesting. And I don't want to say it completely takes all the shine off of what they did leading up to that point, but I think we're going to talk about that one more than anything. Because what could have gone wrong for the Yankees up until that point? I mean, they got someone to give a top 20 prospect for Joey Gallo, who's hitting like 0-13 in his past 100 at bats. It's quite interesting. And Matt, I know you had talked about when we got on here that the prospect the Yankees got for Gallo, all things considered, is quite decent. It's a really good haul for a guy who largely has been a bust this year, to say the least. I don't know how else to really put that. So, any thoughts for you, Matt, with the Yankees deadline?
Yeah, I mean, Clayton Beeter, who is the pitching prospect the Dodgers forked over to get Joey Gallo. If you go back and look at my trade possibilities article for Soto, I had him listed in a package the Dodgers could give up to go get Juan Soto. He is their MLB Pipeline had him as their 15th ranked prospect mid-season. He's a double-A guy. He factors as probably a back-end starter if all goes well, or certainly a high-leverage reliever. He's got a very nice 1-2 punch there that could play well. If he figures out a quality third pitch, he could be a back-end rotation. But, he's in Double-A, so it's not like they made that move and then they're going to call Clayton Beeter up to be a fifth starter right now. Looking at roster resources at the moment, they have Garrett Cole, then Montas, then Nasty Nestor, the now only lefty in the rotation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I messed up. I don't know why I said Montgomery only lefty.
Domingo Germán and then Tyone as their 5 starters. Okay, but, that's not great. Severino's still injured. The bullpen took hits. You're really not going to rely on Clark Schmidt or Diego Garcia or now the injured Luis Gil, right? It was very weird to see that move happen. And you're really chasing first of all, the Yankees lead the league in defensive runs saved.
Yep.
Okay, their only soft spot is center field with playing Judge.
Is it though? Is Judge even a soft spot?
Yes, because he was -6 in defensive runs saved this year. That's the only
in center specifically.
Yes. Right. But here's my question: why not just move him to left and play Benintendi in center? You have moves, you have guys that you could have used there. I don't know. And then to get a dude who's injured, if you're gonna make that move, you gotta get a guy who can actually help you, not a guy who's got plantar fasciitis, which I suffer from. And when you get it, you can't run. You can't be on your feet, which is the whole job of a center fielder. So I don't get it. Cashman was doing well. The Red Sox floundered quite a lot. I guess the Blue Jays convinced Whit Merrifield to go get vaccinated to go fill a hole there. And nobody else in the division really did anything. So it was you were just going to widen the gap, and then you went and screwed it up.
Yep, and you mentioned like the Blue Jays getting Merrifield. I like that move a good bit.
Oh,
Yep.
I do too.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Just like impressive that you turned Merrifield, because like just last week he didn't go to Toronto because he wasn't vaxxed.
Yep. And so I mean, one would think he's got. I mean, with the home games being there, he's probably going to get. He's probably going to get vaccinated there. Probably.
Imagine he doesn't. Imagine he doesn't. Imagine that's a twist, and he just doesn't. He's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Bender said that Merrifield said during the All-Star break that if he was traded to a contender, he would get vaxxed.
I just want the world to burn now that the Yankees traded Montgomery, so I'm just hoping for the worst.
Well, one time on an episode, James, you and I basically talked about anytime you get a chance to take a shot at the Red Sox, you're going to do it.
True.
I don't know what they did.
Well,
I don't know what they did.
No idea.
They did a little two-step on both sides of the fence. We're going to sell, but then it's like, no, shoot, no, we don't want to do that. So then we're going to go get Tommy Pham. And it's like, no, well, we're going to go get Eric Hosmer. But then we're going to send out Christian Vasquez in some random order. What's one word to describe the Boston trade deadline other than confusing? That's the best one I can come up with.
Flummoxed?
Yeah, weird. I don't know. We're just weird.
Whoa. Okay, we just saw who the sophisticated one was.
Yeah.
Weird, confused, and flummoxed.
I don't know what. And by the way, why couldn't the Nats and Padres figure out like a 3-team deal to get Hosmer to Boston and then maybe a little bit of stuff, more stuff to the Nats? I don't know, but that was weird. That was very very weird.
It did not.
Reese McGuire. You got a guy who slaps people, and then you got a guy who got caught doing inappropriate things in the mall.
Masturbating. Just say it. Masturbating.
Yeah, and then I don't know. It's just a weird. And then Hosmer's like
so weird, dude.
Kind of, sort of stable first base, but not really. But like, why not just call up Tristan Casas?
Yep. That's probably the question on everyone's mind, right? Like
why not just call that guy up? And then you put a ridiculous price tag on JD Martinez for no reason, and then ship Christian Vasquez out for like a bucket of peanuts.
Yep.
Matt,
wait, who had a worse one, the Mets or the Red Sox?
The Red Sox, because ultimately the Mets get Jacob deGrom back at the deadline.
Okay, but we're not counting like.
Why?
I mean, yeah, the Padres get Tatis back at the deadline.
Yeah, but they already won. Like, we don't need. They've already won they've won the world.
But like, in the moves made today, why did the Mets feel they had to give up 4 dudes to go get Darren Ruff?
Yeah, it's confusing, especially when JD Davis has historically been good against lefties, and that's all Darren Ruff can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, those were interesting. And then you look at some other teams too. Matt, I'll probably kind of put you on the spot here, but looking at a starter reliever combo, Phillies get Noah Syndergaard. They also had David Robertson earlier in the day because, well, we'll get to the Cubs then in a little bit because there's some thoughts with the Cubs there. But they get Noah Syndergaard and David Robertson. But then when you look at a team like the Twins, they go ahead and they add Michael Fulmer. They get Tyler Mahle from Cincy. They give a couple top 30 prospects for him. Also got Jorge Lopez from Baltimore. Again, not a shock that he was dealt. So which starter reliever trio do you prefer the rest of the way? Is it the Phillies haul or Minnesota's haul?
I'm actually going to pivot and go with the Braves.
Okay, didn't know that was an option, but okay.
Because they got Jake Otter. They traded Will Smith, who I think they got tired of with that shenanigans with Soto before the All-Star break, where Soto basically went cryy face emoji when he made it to first base. They shipped him back to Houston to go get Jake Odorizzi to help their starting rotation. And then they gave up basically nothing in Jesse Chavez and Tucker Davidson to get Raisel Iglesias. So, I don't know. I mean, I like what the Twins did quite a bit with the 2 bullpen pieces and Tyler Mahle, who is an underrated starting pitcher and gets a big boost in getting out of Cincinnati in terms of ballpark factors. I'm going to go with the Braves 1, Twins 2, Phillies 3.
James?
I will just swap I'll swap Atlanta and Minnesota. I love what Minnesota did the whole day. And I think last week, Colby, I said I thought the Twins were in on Luis Castillo. I was just wrong on the Reds pitcher. I love that deal because he has been super good pitching in a very bad ballpark, as you mentioned, Matt. And they got two great arms. Another thing I mentioned last week was I wanted the Yankees to just go attack Detroit's bullpen and just get everyone from there and just make it the Detroit Yankees in the bullpen because they've been good. Getting Fulmer and Jorge Lopez to go along with Molly is a great addition for a team. Again, Matt, you mentioned earlier, divisions going for it. Nobody in the Central did anything. Nothing.
Nope.
The Guardians didn't do anything. The White Sox saw Tony La Russa fall asleep in the first inning last night. Didn't do anything.
Tried to get Ohtani, but gave up.
They made an offer. They made an offer.
Tried to get Ohtani. Okay, I'm so happy for them for making an offer. But Minnesota realized like we went out in the offseason and gave Correa a deal that no one expected us to, and we're in it now. And I think that they addressed their needs. They needed another starter. They got it. They have, and now they added 2 elite arms in the back of the bullpen. Obviously, value-wise in terms of fantasy, like you need to be in a saves hold league for both of them. But or Cole, what did you call it, Colby? A Selz league, I think.
Selz.
Selz. Yeah. So I think Minnesota and Atlanta not far behind, but I do love Minnesota and what they did today.
Yeah, I can look. The Twins and the Braves are very close for me. I just think that Raisel Iglesias and Kenley Jansen.
That's fair.
Is because like Jorge Lopez before this year had a career 6.0 ERA, right? Like he's having a very good year.
Wasn't that like kind of? I mean, we've seen this a bunch. Starters getting moved to the bullpen.
Yeah.
And just being different.
Right, but I would have liked to have seen him do it for like maybe this be a year and a half into his deal rather than like 4 months into him transitioning to a closer.
Fair.
Right. Michael Fulmer has been very good for Detroit. There's no denying it. I'm just saying in terms of track record, I think the Braves got a little bit more solid track record. And I mean, yeah, they gave up Will Smith, but I think they were basically done with Will Smith anyway. Like,
for the record, I think the Yankees would have been probably right there if they hadn't moved Montgomery for the moves that they did, getting Montas and Efros and Trevino. But
yeah, getting a rookie with 5 years of team control.
5 years of team control, and he's been dominant in a less than ideal situation. So
yes,
we're going to talk about some teams that maybe didn't make some moves that we thought they might, but there's one question that I do want to ask as I'm looking at it here because it does involve a front runner in the NL Central. But the Cardinals went and got Jose Quintana and Chris Stratton from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then nothing. They were rather quiet for the most part on the trade front after getting those guys there. Did St. Louis do enough here? I mean, yes, they got Jordan Montgomery too. I forgot to mix him in there. So Quintana, Montgomery, and Stratton. Did the Cardinals do enough, Matt?
Well, let's face it. It's not like the Central is packed full of tough teams.
Fair.
Right? Like the Reds just gave up. The Reds just gave up because they just
well, they have to face the Pirates, Matt.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
But like now the Pirates are down Chris Stratton and Jose Quintana, so how tough can they be?
True. This is gets great counter.
But they're loaded. They're loaded.
Okay. I mean, Brian Reynolds is a hell of a guy, right? But the Reds just shipped out Brandon Drury, the greatest hitter of all time.
True.
Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle.
Yeah.
And I think there was one other guy. I thought there was another guy that the Reds traded to, maybe. But either way, like the Cubs don't have offense. They're terrible. The Brewers, I really don't know what they're like. The Brewers are doing it with smoke and magic.
Yep.
Like, yes, they traded Josh Hader, but they did get Tyler Rogers back, which gives them another 20 saves. That was an interesting move. They do get Freddie Peralta back in their rotation. Right. So I think that the Cardinals did enough. I think Look, had they given up
For
Dylan
what?
Carlson,
Enough for what? To win their division?
I think so. I don't think the Brewers are going to hold on. I really don't. I really don't know how the Brewers are doing it at this point. I honestly don't. If you look at the Brewers' offense compared to what the Cardinals run out there on a day-to-day basis, I'll take the Cardinals all the time.
I think that they can win the division, but I don't think they're long for the playoffs. Which is obvious because they're either. I mean, let's face it. Like it's a series versus likely the Padres or the Dodgers at some point, or both.
You've got. I think the three top teams in the NL right now are the Mets, the Braves, and the Padres. I don't think the Dodgers are going to last in the playoffs.
I will.
Their starting pitching is a serious problem.
Well, it depends. I think a lot of people undervalue this version of Tyler Anderson that they have right now. I think Tony Gonsolin has been largely incredible, which is weird to say. And then Kershaw healthy. If your worst pitcher right now is Julio Urias, I feel like you're in a good spot.
I mean, yes, they get Buehler back, but Buehler hasn't been Buehler, right? And do you trust Kershaw to keep healthy down the stretch? Do you trust Gonsolin to keep doing what he's like? Sure, their offense is good, but I don't trust that pitching at all.
Colby, to answer your question, I would say no because I'm still held. Like I just can't get past. I have a absolute mental block that they would not move Dylan Carlson, and that's the reason that they didn't get Juan Soto.
I mean, Carlson is technically 2 days older than Soto.
Like if that is honestly, if he does not turn into Babe Ruth, I hope they disband as a franchise.
Yeah, when that report came out, it was almost. I don't want to say it's like going to a steakhouse but getting a burger, and it seems like that was kind of like what was holding them back. I would have liked to see the Cardinals move for Soto, but ultimately they didn't. Matt Selz is happy with the return that he got from San Diego.
I'm also happier watching him play in San Diego than playing St. Louis, but that's just a me thing.
That is probably true, and I'm sure it goes without saying. I'm sure you were getting there, but you mentioned the top 3 teams in the NL. I'm sure the Pirates were 4th, but you didn't get to quite finish there. So they're probably
they do win games with being no hit. So
See, that's what I've been saying ever since it happened. But talk about the Pirates too. They didn't move David Bednar. Brian Reynolds
that
is
kind
of
weird.
A pipe dream. Yeah, that one was weird. The Cubs not moving some really notable pieces that we talked about. So, James, I'll kick it over to you. What are some of the notable non-deals? The easy ones that come to mind are like Pirates and Bednar. You got the Cubs with Contreras and Happ. Those two might be the biggest surprises to me. But what were some of the biggest non-movers at the deadline that you thought were definitely going to?
I mean, I thought Oakland would have been far more active with everyone. Like Ramon Laureano, I think was a perfect piece to get the best crop of prospects back. I just feel like Oakland really missed the boat. Really just kind of chilling back outside of obviously outside of the Montas deal, not moving Murphy, not moving any of their outfield that has been playing well and increasing their value. I mean, they're a dumpster fire of a franchise that have a lot of pieces that I'm sure a lot of teams would have liked, and they didn't move any of them. They moved their best player. That's it. So I think I'll just put Oakland in a bubble. Like we could have obviously said the Cubs, but like you said, it's like the chalk answer. So I'll just go Oakland as a whole. I think they really missed out on a good deadline.
Matt?
Yeah, it's hard to. So we'll see what happens with the Cubs, because if they can in fact find the money to extend Contreras and Happ, then there's reason not to move it. But right now it looks like they're going the Rockies route, which didn't exactly, what the Rockies did with Trevor Story, which didn't exactly work out well for them. I don't know. It's kind of tricky about the ones that weren't made, because obviously we don't know all of the talks that happened and whatnot. But I would say Texas not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't do anything.
In which direction? Do you think Texas should have been buyers, or do you think they should have been sellers?
To go from we're one of the 3 teams involved in the Soto sweepstakes to not landing a single damn player or getting rid of anybody. Like, they didn't move Martin Perez. They didn't move. There's another starter they could have moved. There's some bullpen guys that have been okay.
They did move John Gray to the IL.
Right. Okay. So you don't have pitching. You're paying $500 million for your woeful middle infield. And you're sitting there watching the Mariners load up on people and the Astros load up on people. Like, I don't know. That was a little weird to me. The Bednar one was interesting for sure. I'll also toss the Nats in there too, because there's a bunch of expiring contracts they didn't move that they probably could have gotten something for. Like not much, but like what's the like they did it last year. They moved a bunch of dudes on expiring contracts to get like they shipped a pitcher. I don't remember who. They shipped a pitcher to St. Louis to go get Lane Thomas, who's been a pretty decent outfielder for them. They could have done something like that. I don't know, but I'll go with. I don't remember who I said originally. Texas.
I think it was Texas. Any interest or is there any surprise? Because it seemed like a lot of talk, especially in the bullpen, and James had mentioned it that the Yankees should just become the Detroit bullpen. But they did move Fulmer, but they didn't move and they didn't move Andrew Chafin or Chaffin. I say Chaffin because it sounds cooler. It's definitely not how you pronounce it, but it sounds cooler that way. A lefty specialist, as well as Gregory Soto, who's been excellent, was one of my fantasy darlings coming into the year. But any surprise that they didn't move either of those two?
Yeah, especially because they moved Grossman.
Right.
Like, once they moved, and Fulmer. Like, once they moved them, it's like it should have been open season, and then it just wasn't. It was a weird deadline, man. It was a weird deadline.
It was, because there were some big names that we thought were going to get moved, and then, I don't know if people set the asking price too high because they saw what Luis Castillo got, and they saw what Soto and Bell got, and they saw, I don't know, but that was interesting to me as well. I thought San Francisco could move some of their
for sure.
pieces.
The Rodon asking price was out of control.
Yeah, but they have bullpen guys that have been good that could help somebody. So yeah, I'm there with you with the Tigers. I don't know if AJ Hinch doesn't want to go through a full rebuild, but he can suck it, in my opinion. But you don't know exactly what the asking prices are for some of these guys. But yeah, I thought there were deals that could have been made given what like the Phillies gave up to get a rental Thor, or what, I don't know, an injured Harrison Bader gets you a number 3 starter. Like, some of those things are interesting that nothing else got done.
That's what I get for talking crap to Hallam. But as for telling him that they're crazy for not including Dylan Carlson, then I have to watch the Yankees trade Jordan Montgomery for Jake Paul's lookalike. So his doppelganger is now a Yankees, so that's great.
Yeah, that's going to go over well in the clean-cut locker room of the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So happy.
We'll see how long that foot issue keeps him on the shelf, or how long he can postpone the
Colby, what were
inevitable.
What were some of your surprises?
Yeah.
I kind of alluded it into, but I definitely thought Detroit, like you guys had said, once the first 2 dominoes fell, I thought it was going to be a full-on fire sale in Detroit, namely Soto. I thought Gregory Soto, that is. Thought he would be interesting. And I've been saying it for weeks now. It feels like in early August, I was like, there's no shot that David Bednar does not get traded. That was just, it's Pittsburgh's MO. Get the reliever, don't contend, trade the reliever for prospects, and continue this cycle. That's what they've done. They didn't do it. That one, the Bednar one, was interesting. I don't know how much I believe. It seems like teams were sniffing around Pablo Lopez in Miami. Yeah. I don't know how reluctant they were to actually pull a trigger unless they were going to get some massive type deal. To me, that just seemed like kind of like, like the Angels were listening on Ohtani, but it's like, you really got to blow us away with an offer that anybody would be dumb enough to offer in the first place because it's just outlandishly egregious. That's kind of what the Pablo Lopez news seemed like to me. But the Yankees were in on him, it seemed like. But again, and like Matt said, we just don't know asking prices.
Right.
And you can call on anybody. Doesn't matter. Right. They can't block you from calling. They're going to call whoever they want. Teams have probably been calling on Trout for years. Teams have been calling on Josh Hader for years, and they finally just moved him. So it's so hard. We're not super plugged into that. For all we know, the Marlins could have been asking for 6 top prospects for Pablo Lopez, and it's like, okay, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I heard some rumblings that the asking price was high, but I don't know what that qualifies as now, because based on some of the names that we saw and what they garnered, I don't know what high is.
Right.
I know that the asking price on JD Martinez was high because it was like a top 3 prospect, a major leaguer, and then another piece. I'm like, that dude's like a rental. But yeah, I mean, I know that the Yankees tried to get Luis Castillo.
Yep.
But the Reds were asking for Volpe.
Yeah, and the only way Volpe was being moved is in a
Soto. Yeah, for Juan Soto, not Gregory.
Yes, not well. They thought about Gregory too, but the Tigers actually turned that one down.
And let's put the Yankees not being in on Juan Soto as an interesting surprise too.
Dude, they had I've been saying it from day one. Matt, on a short list, they are at the top of that list with the haul that they could have given.
They are a top. Yeah, I mean, they are a top 5 farm system. It's not just everybody bloviates about the Yankees. No, they legit talent.
Right.
Anthony Volpe has 5+ tools.
Yeah,
easily. Yeah. Let's also not forget about Oswald Peraza, who's also pretty. If he was your shortstop, he'd be the top shortstop in your system. The only reason he's not is because a guy named Anthony Volpe's ahead of him. Yeah. Jason Dominguez is 19 and has been comped to the next Mike Trout. We'll see if that pans out. But the dude's got tools for days. So they could have offered very impressive. Waldachuk could have gone there for Soto plus some other pieces. And that's your escape card for not having to pay Aaron Judge $75 million a year at age 30. Yep. Right? That's your escape card. You get a 23-year-old Juan Soto. You pay him the money that you now don't have to pay Judge, and you let Judge walk, and you go, sorry, we got a 23-year-old to replace you.
Yep.
That was interesting because I thought they could have easily matched the
Padres.
The Padres. Maybe their concern was they didn't have enough major league talent that they could.
Gleyber. They could have. Gleyber Torres.
I mean, they could have given up Gleyber, yeah, for sure. But if you want a major league pitcher.
Fair.
No. Jordan Montgomery.
Apparently Jordan Montgomery was available, right? I mean.
I guess. So that was kind of interesting.
Do you think the White Sox, when they called about Ohtani, offered La Russa in the deal? They were like, hey, we have someone super sleepy for you guys. And he's not a player. But I heard you guys are looking for a manager.
I don't know. I watched people defend TLR way too much today, and I'm like, this guy sucks. He should have been gone. He should have never been hired in the first place. Guy's got more DUIs than World Series rings. So why is he being hired?
There's your sound clip from the episode. Amongst all the analysis and everything we talked about, right there is your sound clip for this episode. Oh, jeez.
I mean, any other curious moves we want to?
No, but give you a follow on Twitter at the Selz Man, because if that gets clipped, that's going to be hysterical on Twitter. So
I mean,
that is your move there. But we could go hours talking about all these trades, all the ones that matter, all the ones that probably don't matter in the grand scheme of things, just because it's fun to talk about, I mean, we could, sure, but we got to put a bow on this episode. But of course, everyone loves talking winners and losers. And Matt, I know you say it takes years to see who actually won the trade, and I agree with you because you got to let the prospects pan out. But for the sake of this, for your next sound clip, in case that one doesn't take off, which it's 100% going to, Matt, who is your biggest winner and biggest loser at the deadline? It can be a team or a player. I'll give you both options.
I guess Padres and move on.
I mean, it's got to be the Padres, right? Because they get at least 2.5 years of Soto.
Just say the Padres and move on.
I mean, it's going to be the Padres / Juan Soto. He clearly didn't want to be in DC. Rosenhaus, or whatever his name is, Boris, the other super agent, gets him out of DC, which he hates signing hitters for. And by the way, I'll give you, I have an odds-on bet that Soto will sign for less money in San Diego than he was offered in DC. Bet you that's going to happen. Less AAV for sure. So I would say that. And losers, I kind of got to go with the Mets.
Fair enough.
Like,
James?
they just, like, of all the pieces out there, they got Darren Ruff and Michael Gibbons. That's it.
I mean, look, when you get Brandon Drury into your injected into your offense, just like,
Didn't even talk about Josh Bell.
Inject that into my veins, and then the Soto guy is pretty good himself. So yeah, I mean, like it's San Diego. There's a large gap, and then I would say Minnesota. I like what Seattle did. Especially
can't overlook Luis Castillo.
Yeah, you can't overlook Luis Castillo. I think Seattle was a perfect landing spot for him. So, losers. I'm just gonna. I know, like the Cardinals. I want to go the Cardinals for principle, not because I think they did good. I do think they added 2 good starters, but just the fact that you give up Dylan Carlson, who's like never gonna hit 20 home runs in a year, is just. They're my loser. Like they're losers.
Yeah, obviously the Padres are the big ones. If not them, I like what the Mariners did. I think they did well. And the Rizal Iglesias trade kind of put Atlanta close to over that edge for me as well. So I like what they did. Losers, can I just say the AL Central minus Minnesota, considering that none of them did anything? Really?
Not a move. Well, Whit Merrifield was traded. That was the only other move.
Also, Luke Weaver went to the Royals for like Emmanuel Rivera, like a third baseman. Cam Gallagher was involved somewhere too.
Yeah. Benintendi was traded a couple days ago. But nobody acquired any players.
Yes, outside of Minnesota. Minnesota did okay, but yeah, that would be mine. And of course, who knows? We could look back 2-3 years from now, and Soto doesn't re-sign in San Diego. Bell walks at the end of this year. The Nationals have this powerhouse team facing the Pirates in the series right before the World Series to head there in the National League. It's just, you never know what's going to happen.
By the way, can I put out a very bold prediction
I'm not going to stop
this year? So the Nats are going to get sold, right? Everybody knows that. The Lenders are in the process. It looks like it'll be Michael Kim, who is like a hedge fund guy from New York, who, by the way, you can suck at Mets fans. He's worth $7.7 billion, which is basically 3 times more than Steve Cohen is worth. So I think with the new ownership, you can convince some players to sign there. I'm going to put out a bold prediction that they get not only Josh Bell back, who loved it in DC, but they also get Trey Turner back because he's a free agent at the end of the year. So they sign those 2 and then fill in with all their nice new prospect toys that have them ranked as a top 6 system now.
Bold. That is bold. That's bold, Matt. And I'll tell you
the Dodgers have had a year and a half to sign Turner, and they haven't done anything.
That's true. This is about like your 3rd or 4th or 5th clip-worthy statement.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
We're gonna start calling them Clip Selz.
Ooh.
Drop the mat. It's just Clip Selz now. That's your new street name.
Yep, that's a nickname. It's Clip. That's the way to go with it. But hey,
I like that.
Sorry, when you put out fire clips, that's what happens. You get the name. Nicknames are made for you. They're never self-proclaimed.
True.
So you are now Clip. So it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure as always. The MLB trade deadline this year did not disappoint. A lot of big names, big prospects were dealt. We'll see how it all shakes out. Not only just the rest of 2022, but for in the years to come, really. And we'll see how. Who knows? Maybe Harrison. Maybe Bader comes back good, and maybe James bites his words with the Montgomery deal, but probably not. But hey, you never know what can happen. We'll have to see. But check out all the moves written up over in the MLB Trade Deadline tracker at fantasyalarm.com. And once you're done doing that, check out the NFL Draft Guide, which is free. It is right around the corner, that being the fantasy football season. So make sure you're checking that out. But don't give up on your fantasy baseball teams. Keep checking out all the great content we have at fantasyalarm.com. You can find Clip on Twitter at the Selzman, and then James Grande is at the _real_Grande on Twitter. So we'll be back next week talking more news and notes, as we're about a week away from the trade deadline at that point, or a week past the trade deadline, I should say. So we'll be talking all news and notes like we do normally on the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball podcast. So until then, have a great week, and we will talk to you in about 7 or so days in the next edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball podcast.